There's an internet meme at this point where someone throws a pebble at a building and Tim Pool is like, is that civil war? Oh, it's going to happen. And I'm like, it would be interesting if you had a time machine and you send Tim Pool back after the American Civil War, and you would be curious to see what he's going to talk about then. It's probably going to be like, oh, this happened. It's probably going to lead to World War. All jokes aside, I don't know whether or not he believes it, but I am fairly certain that within our lifetime, you will not see an American Civil War. Because I don't see any governors talking about secession. I don't see any movements encouraging this to happen, because that is what civil war actually means. It would be like states going against each other. And I don't see any of that. In fact, I see the opposite. If you guys remember at the beginning of the Biden administration, he was talking a lot of mad shit against Texas. Like Biden was like, oh, Texas this and Texas that and Texas. It happened for like a couple of weeks where he kept having like strong statements like, oh, we're going to show Texas what's what. And I think like some of his advisors told him, you do understand that Texas has nukes, right? Like, you do know that they have a lot of military bases there. Like, can you stop that shit? Like, can you just zip it? And like, stop this divisive notion? You know, like, it's okay if you talk bad shit against right-wingers, but stop talking bad shit against states. Because then you have a problem. So, seriously, like, go back in time and with the Wayback Machine. It's an internet website, and you can find the articles, like after Biden took office, and you can see how much shit he was talking about Texas until he suddenly zipped it. Because yes, like that's what it would mean. Like it would be mutually assured destruction at that point. Like if imagine if the first Civil War happened, but everyone had nukes. Like, what do you do then? So that's why I don't think you're going to have a civil war, despite the fact that, according to Disclose TV, over 50% of Americans agree that in the next several years there will be a civil war happening. And this is from a new study by the University of California. I think that people mistake civil war with political violence. And political violence happens when there is no more talking, when there's no more debate, when there's no concessions, when one side feels that they're not being represented, that they're being ostracized, cut off from the conversation, no taxation without representation. At the end of the day, the representation wasn't that important. The problem is, like, one side feels that they do not have a seat at the table, that what their concerns are is being marginalized. And we saw that in Sri Lanka. We saw that with the Yellow Vests in France. I believe it's also in Ghana. So it is something that's happening when people feel like they're not part of the conversation anymore. And it is indeed concerning when you look into the United States. Anyone that actually looks at a live stream from a debate within the House or the Senate, you will see that the Republicans and the Democrats are talking past each other completely. Like, you would have a Republican coming up and they would see like, so here's the evidence for what we're claiming. And then you have a Democrat saying, I have not seen anyone up until this day show any evidence of what the Republicans are claiming. And like the conversation goes completely past each other. It's like, oh, they come with a statement and they just read the statement from the paper and they do not interact. And you don't get to see this happening in other countries. I mean, even in the United Kingdom, politicians still talk and address each other. Again, like, I encourage people to do this. Like, go online and watch any of the live leaks from the American legislator, and you're going to see how the politicians just talk past each other without engaging with any of their ideas. Even the January 6th hearings. Like, the January 6th hearings do not have cross-examinations. Like, you do not have the person being accused able to talk with the witness, able to cross-examine the witness. Not the person himself, but at least his lawyer or something like that. Like, all of that is being removed. It's just one side talking and the other side listening. And yeah, I mean, I can see why in that situation, especially if it keeps going and going and going, then the future looks bleak. And people are worried about civil unrest. I mean, this is exactly the same problem that's happening in the Netherlands with the farmers. This is exactly what happened with the truckers in Canada. Is the fact that there was no negotiation. Like, the government never addressed the problems of the truckers. They didn't try to find a middle ground. So eventually, people were desperate enough and they decided to go on the streets. I mean, do you think it's pleasant to go on the street in the middle of the winter and protest? Like, people don't do that unless they feel they have no other choice. And this is exactly why over 50% of Americans agree that in the next several years there will be a civil war. They're not using the classic definition of what a civil war is. What they are referring to is political unrest. And this is why you have people making a meme out of Tim Pool, because when he says civil war, people are thinking about the historical connotation. They're thinking about the actual definition of armies going against each other. What Tim Pool is talking about is what these 50% of Americans talk about, which is an uprising, civil unrest. So let me know what you guys think, though, and I will see you in the comment section. Take care.